On this episode, I'm going to show you the best way to cook a steak by pan searing it in a cast iron pan, caramelized, juicy and tender. This is the perfect way to make a steakhouse style steak at home. We're going to be cooking a New York strip today, and it's about 2 inches thick. When we're purchasing a New York strip, we want to get a fat that's nice and creamy around the sides. As we look, you can see these white speckles and these lines. It's almost like a marble countertop, and you want to have good marbling because that's going to help the steak stay nice and juicy. I like to season my steak about 1 hour before. I bring it out and I bring it towards room temperature. After 2 hours, you got a chance of bacteria building up, so 1 hour is perfect. I'm going to give it a generous seasoning. What we're looking for is sort of a dry brine. The juice will come up and then it'll go back in. So I'm using some kosher salt, and I'm going to season it with some pepper as well, and I'm going to turn this over and we're going to season the other side of the beef as well. By just allowing that steak to sit out for about an hour, it's going to help it just take that chill off it, and when you're cooking, it's going to help speed up that cooking process. So I'm going to place this to one side and I'll set up the cast iron skillet. After the steak's rested for an hour, you're going to notice that it will get some puddling on it. And when I say puddling, you'll notice there's a bit of water on the top. We want to remove that. Anytime we're cooking any protein, it's always important to make sure that we dry it. So I've got some paper towel. I'm just going to take the steak off the plate. And then what I'm going to do is just dry the steak, and that will stop it from sweating in the pan. It's going to help give us a nice crust. Once it's dry, we're ready to cook. You can see that the pan's smoking hot, and we want it hotter first to get that initial crust. Remember, when it goes in there, it's going to drop down the temperature. So what we're going to do is add some oil to the pan, and you're going to see some smoke now coming up. It's going to be quite a smoky, when you cook in a cast iron skillet, it gets quite smoky. So I'm going to take the steak and I'm just going to press it into the pan. I'm going to reduce the heat down to medium now, medium-high, and I'm just going to let it cook. When we're cooking steak like this, we want to cook it 2 minutes per side. So let it cook for 2 minutes and then turn it over. If you find that your pan's a little bit too hot, maybe 60 to 90 seconds, always allow to use a thermometer. The most important thing when you're cooking steak is let the thermometer guide you. The times what we state in the recipe is just times that have worked for us, but your steak may be slightly a little bit thinner, so your thermometer is going to be your best friend. So as we can see, the steak's cooking nicely in the pan. It's going to be getting a crust on there. So what I want to do now is just take the steak and I'm going to turn it onto its side. So I'm going to get the fat side as well. But as you look at this, you can see that it's forming a nice crust on the steak. That Maillard reaction, which is basically the proteins and the sugars caramelizing, and that's what gives it a wonderful taste. Whilst that's browning, I just want to talk about the finishing butter. So we're going to be using a compound butter today, and they're really easy to make. As you can see, this butter, basically what I've done is I've chopped up some herbs, oregano, thyme, and some rosemary. You could use chives and parsley if you wanted to, and some garlic, and we've minced the garlic fine. We've added those to a bowl, and then we've added it with some butter and mixed them all together and rolled it into these circles, and this is called a compound butter, and I use these a lot in cooking. So I'm just turning over the actual steak. You can see it's getting a nice colour. And what we do is we just keep on cooking these 2 minutes per side. I'm going to keep on cooking and flipping the steak over and add the butter. And you can see it's got this beautiful golden crust on it. At this stage now, I feel quite comfortable. I'm ready to add the compound butter. So what I'm going to do is take a couple of pieces of this butter and add it to the pan, and this is going to add a beautiful flavour. And as it's melting, I'm just gonna put it on the steak. I'm just gonna place them on top, just give her a smear and bring it back in. Oh, goodness gracious, by Jove. I'm gonna remove the steak, place it onto a plate, and then what I'm going to do is take that little bit of butter and just put that butter on the steak. And we're gonna let this sit. I'm gonna cover it with some foil and let it sit for about 10 minutes. And what we want to do is let all of that juice, what's come up, go back into the meat. We don't want to slice it for about 10 minutes. I promise it will be worth it. You'll see when I slice it just how juicy this is going to be. The steak's rested for 10 minutes. Now I'm going to slice the steak against the grain. I normally slice the steak about 1/2 inch thick. And then I like to finish the steak with some flaky salt, such as Maldon, just making sure that you cover each piece. Just look at that steak, happy days.